Talk a little bit about BARENBRUG. That's actually me and my father and my son. Plant a Legacy is our slogan. And our company has been in business for over 110 years. And we're working on the 4th generation. We've been Royal accredited. It's based in Holland in 2004. We employ about 500 employees, and we have over 200 PVPs, which is varieties that are registered, that are recognized as being better than other varieties in the classification in order to be registered. And we spend over $6 million annually in development of new grasses. And the guy on the left there, I don't have a pointer, but the guy on the left is Joseph BARENBRUG. He started the company in 1904, something like that. And what he did, it was the first innovation really for BARENBRUG and also in the seed industry, was there they stacked hay up in lofts, and then they would take the hay out of the lofts. And what was left in the bottom of the loft was straw and some seed. And they would sift out the straw from the seed, and then they would take that seed and go plant it. And so whatever it was they were planting was basically whatever it was that made up that hay. And Joseph BARENBRUG revolutionized identifying those seeds, separating those seeds, and then planting them so that they could find out specifically what are the characteristics of each one of those species when it comes to hay production and grazing and hay and forages and so forth. So that was one of the first innovations that BARENBRUG had. Now we say think global and act local. We have 18 operating companies, 29 branches over 6 continents. You might say, well, what does global mean? Well, when you think about the species that you're grazing in your pastures, they're probably not native to here, or wherever it is that you're from. They're native to somewhere else in the world. And when you're going to improve forages, it's important that you go back to their origin, where they came from, so that you can take basic selections from native plants to make improvements. Now we have research and development in 21 countries, seed production worldwide, and brand awareness worldwide as well. And hopefully you recognize some of these brands if you picked up the catalog in the back, but we specialize in innovation. Now our mission statement is to increase animal productivity to help feed the world and enhance its green spaces. So what does that mean? Well, it is estimated that the population of the world could be near 10 billion people in 2050. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And that's what you and I are going to be tasked with, is trying to feed these people. And what do they eat? Well, there's 2 major things that they consume outside of grains that apply to us. One is milk. So milk contains almost all the nutrients that humans need to live. And since 1960, the world's milk production has doubled. The milk consumption has doubled. And the growth is coming from developing countries. In fact, they consume milk at 10 times the rate, the growth in milk consumption is 10 times the rate as it is in developed countries. And in order to keep up with this demand, our milk production is going to have to grow to 700 million metric tons by 2020. Now the other thing that we produce that they consume is meat. And meat production is expected to double in the next 20 years. So if you look at this graph, the bottom line of the graph is developed countries, and the top of that graph is developing countries. So as they become more developed, they start consuming more of these things. But the interesting thing is they're unable to produce them themselves. So it falls on us to produce those for them. And not only we have to do that, we have to do that with less land. So as the population grows, there's urban sprawl, and land that we were using for agriculture is now being used for housing and development and other things. And then it's also important that we have a responsibility environmentally to do things better. So to sort of recap, we've got more mouths to feed, we've got less land to do it on, and we also have to be very conscious of our environmental footprint, right? No challenges there, right? So let me ask a question. How many of you know how long a corn hybrid is viable in the marketplace? How many years does a typical corn producer use a variety of corn? Somebody said 4, so 3. Well, the answer is 3, that's right. The corn hybrid is a really rapid fire technology. Every 3 years something new is coming around. And that's important because there's improvements that are being made to help us feed the world. What about your cattle? how often are you making improvements to your genetics and your cattle herd? Most folks would say all the time. I mean, it's something that happens consistently. I mean, we replace bulls every 5 to 7 years. Cows last 5 to 12 years. It's kind of a constant change. But we're always looking for improvements in how to produce more. So what about grasses? How often are new grasses being developed and put into the market? Any guesses? Well, for somebody that spent their entire career promoting the development and promoting the new grasses, I'm sort of ashamed to say that most of the grasses that are out there are quite old. Potomac Orchardgrass is 80 years old. Fawn Tall Fescue, 51 years old. Climax Timothy, 68 years old. Annual Ryegrass, 57 years old. And I think it bears an interesting question, is if in all these other parts of our production, we implement new innovative technologies, but yet oftentimes our forage and our grasses are something that's quite old. Well, at BARENBRUG, we have a research center in Oregon where we develop new grasses. We specialize in the development of cool season grasses. And you can't help but grow grass in Oregon. It's the easiest place to grow grass in the world. So why do we do our selection for forage production in Oregon? Well, that's where almost 90% of the world's cool season grass seed is produced. So in order to get that really nice grass that grows out there in your field and your cattle are gaining well on, there has to be seed in order for that to be available, seed available for you to get. So what we do in Oregon is we select for seed production, and then we send those products out into the field and they're tested, and then they're brought back again and tested for seed production. When we do this, we spend $6 million on research and development worldwide. So what are we looking for? What are the basic criteria that we look for in forage grasses? Well, we look for superior yield. We're looking for disease resistance. We're looking for different maturities. Some things that mature early, some things that mature later. Stress tolerance, heat tolerance, drought tolerance, all those types of things are what we're basically selecting for when we're breeding new grasses. Specifically to pasture and grazing applications, we're looking for palatability. I've heard several mentions about softleaf tall fescue. We want the cattle to prefer it. We want them to eat it. We're looking at fiber digestibility. So we want every bite that the cow to take, that we want it to feed the promotion, the growth of meat or milk or whatever it may be. We're looking for good animal tolerance. We're looking at persistence under real-world conditions. So when you're grazing and you're using it, we want to know that it's going to persist. Then there's also special consideration given to the species of animal that's grazing. As a cow grazes, she wraps her tongue around it, breaks it across her teeth, and eats it, where a horse bites down at the ground. So it's important that you understand the grazing habits of the animals that you're trying to feed. I won't go into all this, but it's not simple that this stuff gets brought to the market. It's about 17 years from the time that one of you talk to me in the back of the room and you say, you know what we really need is this. This is really my problem. I wish I had a grass that would solve that. From the time we take that conception to the time it becomes a finished product can be up to 17 years. And one of the things that's important about that is there's a difference between seed companies sometimes and seed marketers. Is sometimes you will get folks who will come in at the middle of this program or towards the end of it and put a product to the market. BARENBRUG and the companies here that are selling seed, they've worked through this entire process. So they're in it for the long haul, and because they're committed to providing the best forage grass seed possible. Well, the question is, so you do all this money, you spend all this money on breeding and developing new varieties, but can you tell the difference? Well, you can't tell the difference in here. The color, the light's not great, but things like rust, you can see that there's a difference between the rust tolerance of this variety and the next. Persistence, things like salt tolerance. But there's also things you can't see. So things like fiber digestibility is something that we know is important, but you can't necessarily see it just by the research. Does it really make a difference? Dan Undersander at the University of Wisconsin, he talks about that there's a bigger difference between the top performing varieties in forages, grasses, than there is in corn and soybeans. And to put that in perspective, if you just take tall fescue, for instance, the difference between the top performing variety And the bottom performing variety in their trials is 3.5 tons. When we look at tall fescue, it may only be a 5.5 ton total crop for that species. So by choosing a lesser variety that doesn't perform, you're putting 60% of your production capability at risk. So it's important to make sure you select good varieties. I want to tell a little story real quick if you don't mind. So we're talking about genetics and talking about making improvements. There was a couple ranchers sitting up on the hillside above their cattle ranch. And they were talking about how they hadn't had the best average daily gains and weaning weights. And they were visiting about different things they could do, and they finally settled in on their bull genetics, their bulls. And they decided they needed to introduce some new genetics into their herd. So a few weeks went by, and off in the distance, dust was rolling down the road, and you could hear this diesel truck coming. And it kind of went by and went on by, and these two bulls are sitting there. Sorry, 3 bulls are sitting there, and they said, you know what, the other day those farmers were talking, the manager was talking with the ranch owner, and they think that there's something wrong with our herd genetics. Can you believe that? He said, there's nothing wrong with our herd genetics, first bull said. He said, that's great. You know, maybe they need to think about their management is the problem. Second bull standing there said, you know what, you're right. He said, I don't think it's us, I think it's them. In fact, you know, I've got several cows out there, and I'm not giving up any of my cows to some new fancy schmancy bull. Third bull that was standing there, he said, well, you know, I've only been here about 6 weeks. Only about 2 of those cows out there in the pasture even like me. But I'm not going to give up any of my cows to this new bull. So then, again, this truck comes by, only this time it makes the turn. And it comes down the gravel road, it pulls up in the drive, and it pulls up, it backs up to the lot, lets the air off those tires, big, nice Peterbilt, brand new aluminum trailer. And off out of that trailer walked the biggest, meanest BARENBRUG bull you ever seen in your life. He didn't have to look through the fence at the cows grazing out in the pasture. He just flat looked over the fence at the cows grazing in the pasture. He walked out there in that lot, and you know how they did. He just muscled up, walking all over, kicking dirt. He's slinging slobber everywhere. That first bull in the lot said, you know what? That wasn't very Christian of me to act that way. You know, I think maybe we do need a new bull, and I think I'll be more than happy to share some of my cows with you. Second bull said, you know what? We should be ashamed of ourselves. I can't believe we acted that way. I think I'll give up some of my cows too. About that time, boom, that third bull just busted through that wooden fence out there in the lot, started running around, strutting and bellering and carrying on, hair standing up on him. He started kicking dirt, acting aggressive. That first bull said, what are you doing, boy? Don't you know that thing will kill you? He looked over at him and said, I just want him to know that I'm a bull. All right, so now everybody's back awake. Okay, good. So at BARENBRUG, we focus on tactical and practical solutions. So it has to be practical in that it has to be able to fit into the means and capabilities of a manager. The second, it has to be practical in that it provides a solution to a problem I have. NutriFiber, you can pick up flyers on the back. NutriFiber is our product for the confinement and semi-confinement dairies. And it's made up of products of grasses that are very highly digestible. They have physically effective fiber, and they make a nice addition to the mixed ration. On our pasture-based programs, we have a couple products, or programs I should say. One is Get Plus, which is an endophyte program, which I won't get into too much here, but it's a program where we are able to enhance varieties and grass species with the presence of an endophyte that doesn't produce toxins, but it does make the plant live that longer. The next piece is called Pinpoint. And Pinpoint is very specific to grazing, and it's about maximizing the days of grazing. And Ben talked a lot about these types of things. In fact, they even use some of our Pinpoint products in that mix, in the mixes they use. So no matter where you're at or what your base forage is, You might never mind the months across the bottom because that varies where you're at, but you have a distinct growth curve of your forages. And there's times of the year, get this to work, there's times of the year where you have gaps in your forage availability. Let's assume this line is how much forage you need. And there's times of the year when you have too much forage, and there's times of the year when you don't have enough. And the Pinpoint Forage Delivery System is a program to help you fill in these blanks. It doesn't matter where you are, there's specific recipes for your local area, but there's products that you can use that perform well in that situation. For instance, you can stockpile into the wintertime or use swath grazing. You can pick a warm season plant to fill in the middle gap in the summertime. And you can use brassicas or turnips for fall utilization. And so effectively you filled in these gaps in your forage deficit. And hopefully if you've chosen the right varieties and got good establishment, you've also increased the forage availability. Now whether that means that you increase your stocking rate, or it could possibly mean that you harvest the excess to be fed back at the times that you just simply cannot fill in that gap. Also, the maturity of different species when we're talking about perennial plants varies. And it's good about, if you're going to use a mixture, to mash those up to maximize the days of production from that mix. So generally we start with tall fescues and orchard grasses, seem to be the ones that mature the earliest. And then it moves into soft-leaf tall fescues, tend to be a little bit later. And then perennial ryegrasses, and then typically timothy is the longest, the latest maturing species of the perennial grasses. And you can use that to help select a mixture that will help provide forage for the longest period of time possible. Now I was asked to talk about a few specific products that are used in this area. One is Alice white clover. And if this was my farm, I would be talking about how the hired hand made a mistake here. I don't know if you can see, but somebody didn't drive very good when they were spreading their clover. These green strips. And I'd like to just point out that I didn't wait there all day to take this picture, to wait for them to stand in that spot. But if you could see it better, you would see that there's grass there, and where it's green, there's clover plants there. And not only is it feeding nitrogen to the associated grasses with it, it's also where the cattle prefer to graze. So Alice has got a large leaf, it's very persistent, it's very winter hardy. You get high forage yield, you get more leaf and less stem, that's typical of white clovers. It's also very high protein, and it also fixes atmospheric nitrogen that it can share with other plants. BG24T is a blend of perennial ryegrasses that are used in this area. Perennial ryegrass is probably the most palatable, most preferred perennial grass species available. This BG24T is very widely adapted. It's got very strong seedling vigor, so it's those of you that are looking to get something established and get it established quickly, it establishes very quickly. It's got a very high yielding tetraploid in it, as well as a good winter hardy diploid. It's got early maturing. Sorry, it's going by itself. It's also very early maturing, so it also helps with the rust, as I showed in the picture. Now another product I'd like to talk about is HLR Orchardgrass. And HLR stands for high leaf ratio, because that's really where your forage quality is in the leaf. You can tell by this picture the top one is the HLR and the bottom one is not. You can see that there's a lot more seed heads, a lot more stem in the bottom one, where the top one's higher quality. HLR is a great companion with alfalfa. They're very, very late maturing, so you can maximize forage quality from your alfalfa and your grass at the same time. They make great hay, very high feed quality. They're great for 3 and 4 yield, or 3 or 4 cutting systems. They have a low seeding rate, they establish fairly quickly, they're shade tolerant, and of course there's no harmful effects on the animals from orchard grass. STF 43, so you've heard the word softleaf many times today. This picture really points it out. So if you look at the grass on the right, that's a traditional tall fescue, and the grass on the left is a softleaf. So the traditional tall fescue is very erect growing. It has a lot of lignin in it, and actually, if you felt the blades, you would feel that there's serrations on the side of the blade. You run it across your lip, you can feel it pull. Well, we've taken all that out through our breeding program. And we've developed a soft leaf tall fescue, which has reduced lignin, so it's more highly digestible. It's still just as tough as you get from the traditional tall fescues. It can be stockpiled, it works very good for that. It's very highly digestible. In fact, it's 10% more digestible than traditionals. The palatability means more increase in intake, and that increase in intake translates into weight gain. It also yields more than the traditional types. It's perfect for stockpile, as I mentioned. It has high levels of disease resistance and drought tolerance as well. So meadow fescue is another type of fescue that's very closely related to tall fescue. And you are very lucky for the region of the world that you live because you are able to grow this product. It is very similar to tall fescue in nature, but if you were to rank forage quality from grasses, perennial ryegrass is at the top, kind of neck and neck down a little ways is orchardgrass and tall fescue, softleaf tall fescue. But the meadow fescue is actually more closely related to the perennial ryegrass for forage quality. So it's very highly digestible, even more so than tall fescue. It tolerates both wet and dry soils. It can tolerate grazing. It'll outperform perennial ryegrass during dry weather. Something I heard a lot of folks mention last summer. We had a period of dry weather. Meadow fescue would have pulled through that with no problem. And it's also very cold tolerant. And there's been new developments and new varieties that not everybody's investing in. And these new varieties are very, very high yielding. I very much encourage you to try meadow fescue in your rotation. So Green Spirit is an annual grass blend. It's an Italian ryegrass that Ben mentioned using. It's got very high biomass production in a short period. It's better quality than annual ryegrass. Unlike cereals, you can get regrowth after harvesting it or grazing it. There's a lot of that used here. I see people talking about maybe they use this product. It's a great emergency forage after winter kill of alfalfa. So you come out in the spring and you realize that you've had some winter kill from your alfalfa. Green Spirit is something that you can take and plant and have success with, and it'll rejuvenate those stands very quickly. It's great for grass-finished beef. It's a very high-quality forage. In fact, we use it as part of our NutriFiber program for high-producing dairy cows. And it also is great in a crop rotation. So we've done measurements where corn silage yields following Green Spirit were increased by 25%. And that's the story of the cover crops and soil health. It's also great for nutrient recycling because you can pump a lot of sludge on it. It will absorb that sludge, recycle that sludge, and it helps you get out of trouble with the EPA on the dairy side. So I just wanted to close by saying that we're all in a profit crunch. A guy at Farm Journal said that he imagines that the cow-calf person will lose around $22 a head this year with the way the market is going. And what I would say about that is that there's a lot of things that maybe we have or haven't done, but grazing is a good way to offset those costs. It's about efficiency, and you can increase efficiency a lot by using fencing, using better forages, using annual forages. All those types of things can increase efficiency, which increases profit. And I wished I would have came up with this, but I stole it off the internet. But each day grazing is extended, the cow-calf sector saves $3.6 million. And the folks like you that come to these types of meetings and learn about new innovative processes are going to get the lion's share of this. So thank you. I'll take a few questions real quick.
Who gets the money?
Well, everybody in this room has to split it even.